Hello and welcome to the Kerbal Space Program. We are in version 0.24.2, which is first contract, and we're going to be starting a brand new career mode with a whole bunch of new, very fun mods. As you can see, we have our Kethane covered planet back there, and let's start our game. We're just going to call this Kerbal Kareer, and I'm going to pick the hexagon flag and make sure it's set to career mode. Let's start. Now, I've got Interstellar, Module Manager, a couple other mods like Stage Recovery, Tac Life Support, Kerbal Alarm Clock, and Kerbal Construction Time, which is probably one of my favorites at this moment. Kerbal Construction Time forces us to actually build our vessels instead of just pushing the launch button in the VAB and pretty much getting them for free. So let me just get these things set up. There we go. Interstellar tree. Load that. Dismiss that. And Kerbal Construction Time. This was a really great mod. You should definitely go check it out. I'll be doing a spotlight shortly. So for now, I'm just going to upgrade my build rate. And of course, I'll go over what all this really means. The build rate is just how quickly I can build my vessels, and since I need to start with some, I'm going to begin with it being as low as possible. Well, the construction time, I don't want to wait a couple weeks to build just one small vessel. So, we have our contract center, or whatever you might call this place. I don't know if it has a real name. At least I haven't seen one. Anyway, Gene Kerman is the one giving us all of our missions and our bonus money. So, let's go into the VAB and launch our first vessel. Now, we can't actually launch it normally because the launch button gets disabled. So, Kerbal Construction Time, if you do not know how it works, it bases its build time off cost. As you can see, this one's 2 days and 4 hours. And costs 600, whereas this one that costs 1400 is going to take 4 days and 27 minutes. Significantly longer, so I'm going to start with the basic one. Now, this takes 2 days and 4 hours. However, I'm actually going to build this alone instead of trying to do the contracts. Since none of these first contracts actually have an expiration date, I don't have to worry about it. What I do want to do is get 5 science as early as possible. So let me build this. I can exit the VAB now. And now that we're all loaded, really wish that would stop bothering me. I've already updated it, but it persists. Anyhow, now we go to this and we have build time. VAB list, it'll tell us we are building one thing. If you're building more than one, then it will give you a list. And we're just going to warp to complete since we can't really do anything else for these first couple of days. Now, the reason I'm doing this and not actually starting the contracts is because what I want to do is get some early science. And the reason I need this early science is because the Kerbal Construction Time also makes it so you have to wait for your science to unlock. What I mean by this is when you spend your science, for example, the first science tier that you unlock, you spend 5 science for it. And that 5 science that you spend the 5 science to start the research on the node. And this is important because it takes, I believe the first one is 10 days in order to complete the experiments. Meaning that after I spend my 5 science on the first tech node, I have to wait 10 days before I can use any of the technology inside that tech node. So if I get 5 early science, I can begin that research, and while my other rocket is building to actually do the contracts, I will be researching my first tier of research so I can complete more contracts later. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Let's recover this for the science. Alright, so if you notice, I've been pretty much jumping right in here. I've got 18 science, more than enough, and I recovered the command pod Mark 1. This is very important for the Kerbal Construction Time because now it means I can use this command pod and it doesn't take very long to build it. I'll show that in a second. Let's go in the Research and Development Center. As you can see, this looks normal, and new fuel tanks, new engines, etc. Except when I push research, you'll see this over here. Node will unlock in 10 days, 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. Meaning that I don't actually get anything past here until 10 days. And we can check this by opening this window and clicking on Tech. As you can see, basic rocketry will be done in 10 days. Also, I got another upgrade point for my first launch, so I will be spending that on the Research and Development Center so that I can reduce the time this takes. 1 day per 2 science the tech node costs. Well, I'm going to make that 1 day per 4 science, having the construction time. And, of course, that will update dynamically, seeing as how it's now only 5 days instead of 10. So let's go build that first vessel that will get us all our contracts completed. Now, I stated reusable parts are very important to the Kerbal Construction Time, and it's true. As you can see, since I recovered this part, it only takes 1 hour to build instead of 2 days. So, now that we have that as a reduced time, I'm just going to add some basic things, such as a parachute,
Communitron for transmitting some data, along with a few fuel tanks, liquid engines, and SRBs to make sure I can get into the orbit I need to complete all the contracts that I have to do.
There we go, staging is set, and as you can tell, this one's going to take 8 days, 3 hours, and 3 minutes to complete at the max build rate, and it's going to cost a lot of build points to do so. Now, I actually believe this is way more than I'm going to need to get into orbit, the Kerbin orbit. So I might actually be able to take some of this off. How about I remove this bottom layer and see if that's enough. If I want to test this as well, since I don't want to spend 7 days and 4 hours to build this if it's not going to work, I can simulate it. Now, simulations cost a little bit of resources. In this case, it's going to cost me 1,300. Now, simulations are really nice because you don't have to build it, and you can also go, when you go into the options and disable the revert flight button, you can still use a simulation to test your vessel, and it costs you a little bit for it. So I'm going to see if this even works. Hopefully this will be enough to get me into orbit so I can complete all my contracts. Now note, even though I've completed the launch a new vessel contract, I haven't completed it. Meaning that once this scene ends in the game, the simulation is over and everything reverts. So we're nearly at our 200 kilometer apoapsis, and we're just doing our final burn to get into an official orbit to complete the last contract, which is achieve orbit around Kerbin. So we have packed plenty of fuel, and we can see that this vessel indeed does work. Now it's easy to forget that this is only a simulation, meaning everything I'm doing right now doesn't actually count towards my career mode progress, or any progress whatsoever. So as we can see, I have officially gotten my orbit with over 100 units of fuel to spare. So I can deem this as being successful. So let's revert to the editor, and since we are happy with our design, let's build it. And we can leave here. Now the build will take 7 days, so our research will be done before it in 5 days. We'll warp until that's done, and we'll select another research if we have enough science for it. Though I don't think we do with only 13.5. So as we can see, our next vessel is 2 days away. And if we go here, we now have this unlocked, meaning we can now build from it. And I believe these cost too much science for me to do anything currently. Yep, 1.5 science off. Okay then. Are there no other contracts for me to complete just yet? So I guess we'll warp until this one's completed. One thing to note is time will freeze if you mouse over this window. That's a bug from Kerbal Space Program. It's not actually from the mod, so if you're wondering why time isn't going on like this, just simply stop mousing over the window and it fixes it. It's pretty simple. Okay, our vessel's done, so we will just launch that now. And of course put Jebediah in there and launch. Okay, now this is not the simulation, meaning everything we do here actually does matter, so let's try not to mess up. And launch the SRBs. Now of course we had to wait a few days for this to happen, so time goes on and the planets start shifting, meaning this mod adds a lot of challenge for getting transfer windows right, seeing as how you have to build the rockets first, and that does take time. And that's what I really enjoy about it, is that level of challenge. The fact that you now have to incorporate a certain delay for each of your build times. Now as far as this goes, this should be a much more frequently updated Let's Play series in the new Kerbal Space Program First Career mode, or First Contract mode. And it should go on for a little bit. I have a bunch of plans for some fun things I'll be doing. One thing is trying to get a lot of money, and one method I've found that should be quite effective for doing that is if you bring back resource canisters that have more resources in them than you started with. For example, if I go to Duna and mine iron ore, and I bring that iron ore back and recover the vessel, I'll get currency for that iron ore that I mined, essentially. Meaning I can launch a vessel that comes back being worth more than it left, in which case I turn a profit. Now I'm just going to watch my orbit. I have a periapsis that's wicked high, so this should be just fine. And under that idea of being able to return with more money, I can create these big mining operations that would actually basically get me rich and get lots of money for other stations or mining operations. Kind of like a real career mode. Or, you know, I can always make the money used doing contracts or stuff, but I think a giant mining base would be more interesting. And of course, each resource has its own value, so we'll be seeing which ones I find to be most valuable. I think metal has something like an 80 cost per unit, so metal would definitely be a cost-effective resource to get, which would be mining ore and refining it. Now, as we can see here, I'm getting into orbit. I don't want to use too much fuel, because I do still want some for the return trip. And there we go, we are in a full orbit, and we've completed all of our contracts. And if I remember correctly, we can go to the Space Center and get a couple more contract missions. Ooh, that's quite a few. This one, yep, that one doesn't expire. I haven't actually done a whole lot of career mode, so I actually don't know a whole ton of what some of these are. Test the Mark 16 parachute. I suppose I can try that one. Expires in a couple days. I mean, I have that on my vessel, but I don't know if I'll be able to complete it. I guess we'll see. We'll try it, at least. That's the big solid booster. I don't have that. It doesn't look like I can do even any of them just yet. Okay, so we'll try to test the parachute on our way back down. We do have more science because we completed the other contracts. So I'm just going to start up the research. Now, you can research more than one at the same time as long as it's in the same node path, meaning that one we could only research alone because we don't have it unlocked yet. Like if I were to also research this one right here, then I wouldn't be able to research anything past it until this one's done. However, I'm currently researching survivability, so I can't actually research these two. So let's research this and this one, all three of them at the same time. And of course, if we want, we can just make sure they're working right And there are the 3 of them, which will take a max of 20 days to complete. So let's get back to our vessel and try to land this thing. Now, one thing that's very easy to forget, and I very often do it, is that we still can gather science. Like crew reports. Let's keep that data. Let's hop Jebediah on out here, take an EVA report, keep that data as well, and we can board again. Now let's just bring this up and start our descent. Since we're still close to the apoapsis, this will be the most efficient descent we can do. There we go, and just start burning, I guess. And our periapsis will bring us into the atmosphere. I'm just going to bring this down a little bit to try and guarantee that I'll be landing on that land. There we go, and let's time accelerate. Now I do have a little bit of fuel left. A little bit less than a third of a tank. A little bit more than a fourth. So hopefully I'll be able to reach the target velocity for that parachute test, which is going to require me to be less than 470,000 at 20,000 meters. I'm going to highly doubt that's going to happen. I'm going to very highly doubt that that's going to happen, simply because I'm currently at twice that altitude and going almost 2.5 kilometers per second. So we're just time accelerating into our descent. And there goes everything. Let's stop the physics warp. Oh, there goes half of our recoverable stuff, so we just lost a bunch of money there. Do I still have the parachute? I do still have the parachute. Okay, that is good. Now, we're already below the altitude that we could have tested that with, so this contract's a lost cause at this point. Now, our goal is to just land safely. So we will deploy our parachute, start letting the drag slow us down some, and come in for a final landing. Also, while you're in flight, you can check the status of all of your research. As you can see, my tech is still researching. Neat little thing about the mod, you can check on your buildings anywhere, or your build times. Don't want to be going too fast when this parachute deploys. It's not a real chute, so it's very unsafe to time warp while it expands and applies its physics instantly. As you can see, gravitational forces spiked. And that's what I like about real chutes, is the fact that they create their physics over duration, so it's a lot less drastic of a hit when it actually deploys the chute. And poor Jebediah is alone in his pod with his parachute, and he has safely landed. I'm just going to hop on out of here, see if we can't get the flying report. There is the flying report. I'm going to take the data, all of it, and then store it, because I can get a couple more science things here. For example, the surface sample, another EVA report, and if I jump on in, I should be able to get a crew report too. There we go. Maximize our science gathering and recover the vessel. Since we recovered the parachute this time, we can build both the module, the parachute, and the communications array quite quickly for our next vessel. Got 52 science, although it won't quite help us just yet. Whole ton of funding. Still, science won't quite help us just yet because we're still trying to unlock more nodes. Now, you get upgrade points passively and during launches, like when you spend build points. And we have 3 more available to us. So I can either upgrade my build rate for the VAB or the spaceplane hangar, but I think I'm going to upgrade this by 2, so 1 science I gain per 86,400 build points, and I'll upgrade this one more time. One thing to note about the construction time and the delayed research is that it will give you contracts because it will think that you have the parts unlocked, even if you don't quite have them unlocked just yet. TR-18A decoupler, and I don't have the radial one. So all I'm trying to do is avoid taking contracts that have like a 2-day expiration timer, so that I don't actually lose anything. Now, I don't have either of those. Radial mount parachute, I don't have that either. The RT-10 is the small solid booster, so I will take that one. And I have that stacked decoupler, so I'll take that as well. I don't have the large stock rocket booster, which is the BACC, or the radial decoupler, so I'll avoid those for now, since I don't want to accept them just to fail them, since I can't build a vessel as quickly as 5 hours. Now, stage destroyed, these messages are from the stage recovery mod. They just tell me what parts really break. So we'll close out those and start building a vessel to hopefully complete these contracts we have. Now of course some of them will expire sooner than others, so we're going to try to build a quick vessel to get these done. Let's see, that one will expire in roughly 2 days, just from memory. R10 solid booster and stacked decoupler. Stacked decoupler needs to be tested in flight at a certain speed. So we'll take this because it has a quick build time. And the build time becomes less and less the more you use the part. As you can remember, last time it was 2 hours to build this one part. Now it's only 1 hour, simply because I've used it repeatedly. The Kerbal Construction Time kind of gets to know the parts you use, so the more frequently you use them, the faster you can build with them. So, parachute, that is the decoupler that I need to test. There we go. Of course, it's going to shoot it up to 2 days immediately. Okay, so I'm actually getting this wrong. Like I said, I haven't played career mode a whole lot yet, but I've been reading expires in 5 hours and thinking that that means it only has 5 hours to complete the contract, when in reality I have a year. Like I said, I'm being a complete noob, and that's kind of embarrassing that I was saying that I can't accept these because they expire so soon, when in reality they don't. So I'm actually going to accept these since I have a year to complete them, which is more than enough time. So that's me just being a bit of a noob to the 0.24 update. And this one I have over almost 5 years to complete that one. That should not be a problem at all. That one's roughly a year, and so is that one. Okay, so I have all of my contracts now. Let's build that vessel. So the idea is I test this decoupler after I launch with that LVT-45. I could swear I do have the LVT-45. Wait a second, why are these parts blue? This is odd. Experimental. I don't have the technology unlocked for these yet, do I? Wait a second. Like I said, some of these mods I'm using are still a bit new to me. So, I have a feeling that is the LVT-45. Now, it's not experimental. It's just not done being researched. So apparently, the Kerbal Construction Time will give you access to some of your tech, even if you don't have it done, like general rocketry. That's where I'm getting my part from. However, I don't have the research done, yet I have the ability to put it on my vessel. Now, I don't know if the mod is doing this, giving me these parts experimentally, or if Kerbal Space Program is giving me the parts because I have contracts for them. That I do not know, but I guess I'll have to test it during my mod spotlight for Kerbal Construction Time at a later date. For now, I am just going to make sure I get everything set up properly for this flight, and I'll be back in a little bit when I'm done building my rocket for this. Okay, so this is the final product I have here. It's got the rotated engines so none of them accidentally overheat the bottom ones or the ones below them. And this will make it so that I can actually get this thing, because the staging basically has me launch these top two with the bottom ones, because both the solid rocket boosters and the LV-909 require it to be launched while landed, and they should get me to the height in 6,600 meters to launch these two, which will then get me to the height to detach this decoupler here, and then fire off this solid rocket booster here, in which case I would have completed just about all the contracts. Then I have the radial decouplers here, which will fire off once I'm in orbit, and a small engine to get me back. And I'm also carrying a little bit of science. Then I have my top mount parachute and my radial mount parachute for the last two contracts. As you can see, LV-909s while I'm landed, 6,600 meters for these middle tier engines, the LV-T45s. The parachute, the top parachute, will launch first, and the radial mount parachute will launch second as we get closer to the ground. The small solid rocket boosters, those ones 3 down there, will launch during land, while I'm landed, pre-launch. Stacked decoupler will happen just before the BACC solid rocket booster, or the big one. And then the radial decouplers for when I am in suborbital at that altitude. So I'm probably biting off way more than I can chew in trying to do all of these in one go, well, all but 2 of them, explore the moon and save one of the Kerbals. But I ran a couple simulations using this, which did cost me 1,300 each. I think I ran 3 to make sure this thing's working all nice and well. And though it's a bit hard to control without any actual control, just about yet, if I'm lucky that it doesn't flip out too much and I guess time it right, I should be able to pull this off. It'll be a neat little challenge, so we'll see. Anyhow, we'll leave here. It's already building. I've already set that up. So this is a good spot to wrap up this episode. Episode 1 of the new Let's Play I'm going to be doing. And this will be updated more frequently, as I've stated before. Anyhow, I thank you all for watching. I will be back next time when this vessel is ready for launch, and you'll probably see me right on the launch pad at the start of that video. So, I'm PTT GRW, signing out.